Good afternoon and welcome everybody to At the Book here for May the 5th, 2022. I'm Zach Ewing along with Devin Jackson. He is live from the Sportsbook, the Caesars Sportsbook at Paris, New Orleans in downtown NOLA. We will be joined a little bit later by Jim Derry. That's good. That's a good way to start the show right there.
Yes.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah, somebody was, or a group of people were cheering. I think it was over at the poker table. So,
All right. Yeah, when I was playing poker in Caesars Palace last week, and there was a woman on a slot machine, like right around the corner, who would go, woo, like every 30 seconds. And I started joking with the other players in the poker tournament I was in, like, this is either the luckiest slot machine ever, or she's just like screaming when she wins 50 cents or just doesn't lose. Like, I don't know what's going on, but she's really, really excited about that slot machine, which usually doesn't happen. So, anyway, we are going to talk quite a bit of stuff. NFL draft was last week, of course. It's time to start looking forward to football season a little bit more. We've got a little Easter egg for you as far as that goes. We'll talk some USFL. The Kentucky Derby is in a couple of days. This is a sports betting show. You can bet we're going to talk some Kentucky Derby. And we also have NBA playoffs going on, Devin.
yeah, fun night of NBA playoffs last night. I think the 76ers are just flat out outmatched without Joel Embiid. I think even with him in the lineup, I just don't think they can beat this Heat team. But last night it was fun to watch the Mavericks and Suns go at it. The Suns seem like they're once again the best team in the NBA at the current moment after struggling with the Pelicans in the first round. So it's been interesting to watch how these second round matches have unfolded. And I think really outside maybe the Celtics and Bucks, I think we pretty much know who's going to win each series at this point.
It seems like that maybe the Grizzlies can give the Warriors a run. I think that's the other one. We'll look at some series odds here in a second, but that's the other one that may be in some doubt. But yeah, Celtics Bucks is the toss up, and look, that one's going to be terrific. 5 games. They shift to Milwaukee. There's no NBA playoff action tonight, by the way. It's like a rare off day. Usually don't get those until late in the conference finals, but no NBA playoffs tonight. Like to remind you a couple of things, and we will get to some picks of the day too, James, later on in the show for MLB. I don't know that we have any NHL picks, but I will tell you some of the series picks that I bet earlier in the Stanley Cup playoffs. First of all, I want to let you know that we are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook and brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Innovative research, inspired patient care. Visit TulaneDoctors.com. And we appreciate their sponsorships. And of course, like to remind you, too, you can sign up for the Caesars Sportsbook app if you haven't done so already. And you will get an $1,100 insured bet on your first bet. If you're a new sign up, first bet insured up to $1,100. You can bet on one of the NBA playoff games tomorrow night. If it loses, you get all that money back. You can go bet it again then on 20 other bets or all on one bet or whatever. You basically get another chance with all that money. And so to do that, go to NOLA.com/Caesars and sign up for the Caesars Sportsbook app. While we wait for Jim Derry, let's take a look again at those NBA series prices, Devin, what we were just talking about. And this is really what you're saying, especially the Suns and the Heat. Heavy, heavy, heavy favorites at this point. And the Suns, I mean, listen, at least so far, it's only been 2 games. They're having a much easier time of it with Dallas than they did with the Pelicans.
Well, I think it's because the Pelicans had so many dynamic young athletes on the court, and not to say the Mavericks don't, but when most of your offense runs through Luka Doncic like it does for the Mavericks, it's a little bit easier to game plan versus having to worry about Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum. Plus, the Pelicans had a serious rebound advantage over the Suns, so they're able to beat them up on the boards and beat them up down low. Whereas the Mavericks just don't have the same type of athletes and length to deal with the Phoenix Suns, and frankly, no one to guard Devin Booker as opposed to the Pelicans.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. The other side of the ball, I think, is equally as important. Dallas just doesn't have perimeter defenders. I mean, maybe it speaks to the greatness of Luka that they have been this good this year and that they've made it this far. when you look at their supporting cast, Jalen Brunson's had a very good year, but again, not a lockdown defender. They brought in Spencer Dinwiddie, okay defensively. I'd have to look at his metrics, but I don't think he's a lockdown defender by any means. And if you're the Suns, I mean, you look in that fourth quarter, they were just going after Luka because it's a hole in his game to begin with, and then I think he's dog tired by the end of three quarters trying to carry the team on the other end of the floor.
Yeah, we've seen situations like that with other superstars in past playoff series where you got to do so much on the offensive side of things. And to some degree, that's what happened when CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard played together for Portland. They would just tire them out, especially when they played the Warriors. Steph and Clay would just run around and kind of tire them out and force them to play defense along with their offensive repertoire. So I think for the Mavericks, they're just running into a buzzsaw. I think I think they'll be able to capture at least one game in this series, but I think the Suns know what they need to do, and now that they've put got past the Pelicans in a tough matchup for them, I think now they're looking forward to maybe facing the Grizzlies or the Warriors in the next week or two.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like a gentleman's sweep, doesn't it? Like Dallas is going to get one in Dallas, and Phoenix will go back and finish this thing up in Game 5. The other series here, you talked about the Heat, big favorites. Warriors are minus 330 right now. They did get one game in Memphis. Obviously, that means Memphis has to win a road game to earn home court back. Do you see that, Devin? I mean, is that a possibility for Ja Morant to come up big on the road?
It's possible, but we know how difficult it is to win games at Golden State in the playoffs. They've made several deep runs in the Steve Kerr era, and I just worry about for them as a young team. You get behind Golden State at Golden State, it's going to be very hard to climb out some of the holes they built when they were playing at Memphis. So I worry a little bit about their lack of experience and how much they struggled against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And if it wasn't for the Timberwolves getting in their own way, they might have had a Game 7 in that series as well.
I mean, Minnesota had the lead in 5 of those 6 games in the fourth quarter. I mean, forget Game 7, Memphis could have been out in that series. They came up clutch. You got to give them credit, but they certainly did not dominate that series. And then we talked about the Celtics and the Bucks. I mean, what a great series! I have a lot of futures bets on the Celtics. I'm hoping they pull through, but they're in the same boat. They lost a game at home. They're going to have to get one in Milwaukee out of these next 2, or they're going to be coming back home in a big hole.
Yeah, I think this feels like a 7-game series. It's just a tough series for both teams because on one hand, you know what you're going to get from Milwaukee and Giannis Antetokounmpo, but in Game 2, they did a really good job defending him and forcing other people to beat them. So I'll be interested to see how things shift when they get back to Milwaukee. But I could very easily see this one going in 7 games because neither one, in my opinion, has the advantage at home. I think either team can go and win a road game. And the Bucks have shown that. And I think the Celtics will get either Game 3 or Game 4 and will shift back to Boston probably 2-2.
Yeah, and I mean, I personally think whoever wins that series is going to the finals, and I think it's going to be against Phoenix. That's no disrespect to Miami. That's no disrespect to Golden State. Those teams can obviously win. Memphis is still alive. But I personally think as we look at the futures odds here, Phoenix is a rightful favorite. They have home court over everybody else in the NBA. They're up 2-0 in their series. It looks like they're going to cruise into the Final Four. And really, from the other side, the reason the Celtics and Bucks odds are so high right here is because they've got to play each other. So you're not sure if they can get past this round. But I think whoever does, whether it's Boston at 5-1 or Milwaukee at plus 650, I like that team to come out of the East.
Yeah, I think for either team, I think they just have what you need in a championship level team. I think they both have stretches where they play lead defensively and obviously led by some of their best players. But for the Celtics specifically, if Jaylen Brown continues to have games like he did in Game 2, it's going to be very difficult for the Bucks to beat them in a 7-game series, especially without Chris Middleton, because that was going to be essentially the matchup: Giannis versus Tatum and Middleton versus Jaylen Brown. And whichever duo was going to play better, I think would have advanced. But without Middleton, it's going to be a lot on Giannis, and he's shown to be able to do that. But in a 7-game series against an elite defensive team, it's going to be really difficult. So I like either team here. I think they're the 2 best values on this board right now. I think the Heat are a decent value, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to beat Miami or Milwaukee when it comes down to it next round.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I mean, look, if Boston and Milwaukee play 7 long games, maybe Miami. I'm sorry, Boston and Milwaukee play 7 long games. Maybe Miami gets rested, and that plays a factor. They've got home court, so I don't want to discount them. I just don't know that they have the firepower when it comes right down to it to beat Boston or Milwaukee. So that's the NBA playoff story. It's a little weird schedule wise. Like I said, tonight is an off day, and then tomorrow they play the same series that were last night. So that will be Phoenix, Dallas, and Miami and Philadelphia. They play Game 3, and then the other two series, Memphis, Golden State, and Boston and Milwaukee, they get 3 full days off. They don't play Game 3 until Saturday. So it's a little odd that works out that way. And honestly, maybe that helps Milwaukee. Maybe Chris Middleton can. Now, we know he's not going to be back for Game 3 or 4, but just the extra days off, maybe they pile up, and by Game 5 or 6, maybe Milwaukee gets Chris Middleton back.
Yeah, I think they're playing the long game here because they know it's going to be a long series. So I think they want to make sure he's fully healthy when he gets back into the lineup. And there's a lower risk of injury when he gets back as well. But whenever he re-enters the series, it's certainly gonna shift things, and I'll be interested to see, especially if it's tied 2-2, going back to Boston. He's ready for Game 5. I'll be interested to see what the series odds look like at that point.
You're watching At the Book here on bet.nola.com. Zach Ewing and Devin Jackson. We are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook and Tulane Doctors. We welcome into the show Jim Derry, who's making just a fashionable entrance here.
Sorry, guys, it's a little crazy around here. I was listening to your NBA commentary, and I think the schedule is a little weird. I wondered about that myself, and I do wonder if it favors Memphis a little bit. Milwaukee as well. We'll see what happens. Maybe it's because of the cross trip. I don't know, but I think that schedule was already made, so I don't know that it matters who was in there. So just a weird.
Boston, Milwaukee is not a long trip, so
that's true. That's true.
I don't know.
So I don't know what the reasoning is there, but we've done pretty well. I mean, not to toot our own horn, but I will anyway. I think us as a staff, we've done pretty well with the NBA playoffs thus far, and hopefully we can continue doing that. We've had some nice picks and a hot start to May, and I hope we can continue that.
Well, on that note, James had asked earlier if we had any MLB or NHL picks for this evening.
I'm glad people are asking. They want to know what our picks are.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of an itch with no NBA playoffs, so we got to scratch that itch. Spencer Urquhart, who's not with us on the show today, but he did our best bets for today, and he actually is playing a couple of MLB over-unders. So that's a new avenue for us, and one of them is really low. It's one of those lines that's so low that you're almost scared, but maybe that's what they want you to think. Mariners raise under 6.5 at even.
Your
money.
M's can't score.
They can't, and they're pitching Robbie Ray tonight, and so the idea, Spencer's idea here, is that they hold Tampa Bay down, and this game is 3-2, 3-1 in either direction.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, a friend of mine used to tell me, and at first I never believed him, and then when I started paying attention to it, he was right more often than not. He does the same in football. He does it with every sport. He'll take if there are multiple games in a day or a night, he'll take the lowest over under, and he'll bet the under, and he'll take the highest over and bet the over. Meaning, because people will see that and say, well, it can't, that's ridiculous. That can't be that low, or it can't be that high. And I'll tell you what, it works way more often than not. And if you look at the public, when you're talking about percentages wise, when you get a super low under, especially in baseball, people don't like betting unders anyway. So if you get a baseball under that's in the 6.5 neighborhood, people are going to bet the overs. That's just the way that it is. So I tend to like that under as well, especially when you get a really good pitching matchup. Unders hit more often than not in baseball, especially until you get into the hotter months.
Well, this year with the dead ball, I mean, the ball is obviously not flying, and that has plays a role too. So under 6.5 in Seattle, Tampa Bay, and then over 8 is Spencer's other pick in the Guardians against the Blue Jays, which, look, it's on paper, it looks like a good pitching matchup. Jose Barrios for Toronto, Aaron Savali for Cleveland. Both of those guys have struggled quite a bit in the first month. and both offenses have been rolling. So I kind of like both of these picks from Spencer. Over 8 on Guardians, Blue Jays, and under 6.5 on Mariners, Rays. They're your
Me
plays.
as well. I like them too.
So well done, Spencer. And by the way, yes, the NBA playoffs are taking a week off, but they're going to be busy all weekend. You got the Wells Fargo Championship in golf going all weekend.
A day
What's
off.
that?
You said the week off. Just a day.
Oh, a day off. I'm sorry, a day off. But the weekend is not just basketball. It's golf. It's NASCAR. And it is the Kentucky Derby. The Run for the Roses starts the Triple Crown. So, Jim, you talked to Jeff Duncan this morning. I've read his stuff. He got handicaps from different experts all over New Orleans, from the fairgrounds and different places. So go to bet.nola.com and give that a read. Listen to Datitude for more in-depth. But as we look at the Kentucky Derby odds, what did you learn from Mr. Duncan?
Well, the number one horse that he likes on this list is Epicenter. 7-2 odds in the Derby, or plus 350 as we know it here on bet.nola.com, the odds that we use. The Epicenter is the Louisiana Derby winner. It is a horse that he says has a little bit more experience than some of these other 3-year-olds. So he really likes that. And then he likes Taba as well. Taba is a horse that is kind of the opposite, doesn't have a ton of experience, but is really up and coming horse, a horse that is really looked well, won at Santa Anita, and loves that horse as a 12-1 shot. And then another horse that he wants to put in to his little mini trifecta is Zozos, who came in second at the Louisiana Derby, and a horse that actually beat Epicenter earlier on, I believe last year at some point. Now, none of these horses have raced in a distance of this long, 1.25 miles. So it's a little bit interesting of a race. And it's always interesting to see which one of these ones are going to come out. Zandon, is the favorite, but to me, Kentucky Derby, it's hard to, when you're picking a favorite, it doesn't matter as much in the Kentucky Derby as it does in the Preakness and the Belmont, because you already have that Kentucky Derby winner, and you see how these horses fared in a little bit longer races, and now they're a little bit more experienced. So the Derby to me is fun, because not only because of the festivities that go around Churchill Downs, but because it's oftentimes a crapshoot. And if you follow some of these guys, and that's why going and reading the spark that we have on bet.nola.com that Jeff posted, and then we're going to talk at length at Datitude. Well, we did talk at length this morning. It was taped, and it'll be aired tomorrow morning. And he goes into detail about some of these horses and the play, and if you've never been to Churchill Downs and what Louisville's like this week, and all those fun things. So it's one of my events that is on my bucket list. I got to do NFL draft last week with you, Zach. So maybe Kentucky Derby's next year. Maybe we go live from Churchill Downs next year.
Well, it would help if the Louisiana Derby winners would start doing better, right? The only twice, in fact, has the Louisiana Derby winner gone on to win at Churchill Downs, and that one was in 1924. It was Black Gold, and then Grindstone in 1996. So you're talking about not a good track record there for winners at the fairgrounds to go on and win the Kentucky Derby. But Epicenter, look, I know Zandon's the favorite. A lot of people, and maybe it's an echo chamber because we're in Louisiana, but a lot of people think that Epicenter could be the third on that list.
And he points out that Louisiana Derby winners haven't won at the Kentucky Derby, but only twice. However, he says they have been a major factor in the race the last 15 to 20 years. He talks about that extensively and says there have been plenty of seconds. There have been seconds and thirds in the same year. So he said that and if you notice that the Louisiana Derby was upgraded not long ago from a tier 3 race to a tier 2 race. So it is gaining traction. The horses that compete at the Kentucky Derby, the Louisiana Derby, are becoming more in the mainstream, and more. That's why you see Epicenter is the second leading horse on the list. So he does like the two horses especially, and he's been talking about Zozos for a couple months now. So I'm definitely going to put a little change on Zozos, at least to maybe place or show.
Yeah, and at 20-1, and this is not the entire list, by the way. There's some horses at 30-1. Epicenter from the number 3 position. Does that bother you or Jeff at all?
He does talk about coming from the inside, that it has been a problem for horses in the past, especially. But he says the experience of Epicenter, and again, when you're talking about just a few months here and there, and the number of races that Epicenter has been able to run in, that it does make a difference. And he does talk about being closer to the rail and where you have to be. He said he doesn't think it's going to bother this horse to be on the inside. But he did take that into account. But he said he likes Taba because Taba's a closer. So that's another horse that we should be watching out for. And Tabor is got a much better position at 12. Being a closer, you can be on the outside a little bit, get away from the pet. Well, not necessarily the outside, more outside than towards the inside at 12. But still, Taba's in a good position to where, as a closer, can finish the race. So I'll definitely be putting something down on that, and I'll be putting a little box trifecta action on Epicenter, Zozos, and Taba.
All right, so if you want more Datitude tomorrow morning, or you can look right now on bet.nola.com, and Jeff Duncan has his picks, but he also has analysis and selections from guys who really, really know the sport of horse racing. Yes. Tom Amos, who's a nationally known trainer, and he's an analyst on FS1, New York Racing Association. Mike Diliberto, who is the odds maker at the fairgrounds. Patrick McGoey, Tim Rice. Let's see, is that everybody? And Chad Scheck-Snyder. So you are getting info from guys who know if you go and read Jeff Duncan's compilation of these analysis.
And you're also hear something that I didn't know about Jeff is he split a ticket, I think about a year ago, won $108,000 on one ticket with a Pick 5 tournament that he was in. And yeah, pretty interesting.
I'm going to make a note to myself the next time I'm out to dinner with Jeff to ask him to pick up the check.
I guess he's our horse racing's Uncle Big Nick.
I guess so. All right.
He only bets on things with 4 legs. So if they have 2 legs, he doesn't bet on.
Devin, what about 3 legs? What about like potato sack races?
I think I'm getting away from that one.
I don't. All right. I don't know. I gave a specific example. Okay, Devin. I don't know a whole lot about horse racing. What about you? Are you picking names here, or what's your strategy when you're betting on the Derby?
I've never bet on the Derby, so I don't know if I'm a good person to ask here, but I do end up watching every year. It's also on my bucket list, a place to go just to be there and say I was there. It's one of the cooler non-major sports that events that happens every year, and you see big stars always go to it. So I don't know if I'm gonna pick anything on this list because I have little to no knowledge about any of these horses.
Pick your favorite name, man. Come on, you got to have a bet on the Derby.
I'll go with number 12. It was at
Taba.
Taba. It's Taba.
Taba. I'll go with Taba.
I'm gonna go with Cyberknife because that sounds like something my 9-year-old would name a horse. Cyberknife.
Well, the experts do say, Zach, they say, have fun with it. Go with the name you like, go with the color you like, go with the number you like, whatever it is. Have fun with it. And it really, unless you're an expert on the Derby, and people like to go and bet too much on things they don't know about.
Don't bet a lot.
So be responsible and just have fun with it. But yeah, go make a little bet. If you like a name, go bet on it. Go bet $3 on whatever to win.
At the horse racing at the track, you can go buy $2 tickets, right? So one thing people do just in their family is that just everybody throws in $2, or maybe it's just $1 or whatever. And you all get a horse. Maybe you even just draw names. You don't even have to pick one. And then whoever horse wins or finishes highest or whatever, you get the pot. And it makes it fun. It makes those 2 minutes that much more exciting. So it's just kind of a fun way. You have your mint julep, you wear your fancy hat, you have your day on Saturday. Mom has her day on Sunday. It all works out. I've
still never had a mint julep. Ever.
I haven't either. And they
don't. Not there, not anywhere.
Don't sound that good to me, dude. You look at the recipes for them, and you're like, if I went to Churchill Downs, I would have one just to say that I did. But it tastes. It almost sounds like alcoholic toothpaste, like you'd be drinking mouthwash. I don't know.
What about you, Devin? You had a mint julep?
Never had it.
All right. Well, look, I'm telling you, next year at this time, we're going to be thanking Tulane Doctors again for sponsoring our trip to Louisville for the Churchill Downs. And I'm thanking them ahead of time. Tulane Doctors, thank
You're
you.
trying to speak it into existence. I like it. And by the way, if you haven't been able to tell from the last 5 minutes, we are as uncultured as it gets. So we need to go to Louisville and get a little culture.
We didn't get any in Vegas.
No, well, that's a totally different kind of culture. All right, so let's end the show here at the book brought to you by Tulane Doctors and Caesars Sportsbook with a little football talk. And first off, the New Orleans Breakers suffered their first loss in the history of the new history, the history of the new New Orleans Breakers, losing to Birmingham on Sunday. They got knocked around a little bit in that game.
They did, go ahead, Devin. Go ahead.
I was going to say it was a physical game. I think these two teams are going to be still one of the two best teams in the USFL. But yeah, they ran to a buzzsaw on what was that, Saturday? So I'll be interested to see how they bounce back. But their offense didn't look as explosive as they did the first couple of weeks.
No, I mean they could not protect at all. Now, one thing you'll tell from the odds is that it seems like the best teams in the USFL are all in the South, in Birmingham, New Orleans, and Tampa Bay. And then there's only 8 teams. There's 4 teams in the North, 4 in the South. The other team in the South that's not in that triumvirate is the Houston Gamblers. And we have a soft spot for the Gamblers in our heart just because of their name. But I don't think they're very good. And the Breakers, this is as big of a favorite as they've been all year. 4.5-point favorites over Houston on Sunday afternoon.
Old people like me will remember that the Gamblers is where Jim Kelly got his start. So long before he lost 4 Super Bowls with the Buffalo Bills, he was losing with the Houston Gamblers. So hopefully we can the Breakers can go in there. Look, one thing I want to say about last week that was what was rough, and if you're getting into the USFL and you're looking to make a bet, one thing that was disturbing if you're a Breakers fan is that Birmingham defense is not very good. They've been able to score better than anyone else. So it's kind of a showdown of the Birmingham offense against the New Orleans defense. And the Breakers defense did okay. But man, they just not move the ball at all. They couldn't figure things out against a defense that really had been kind of messed around a little bit throughout the first two games of the year. We'll see if that changes going forward. But the Breakers need to get something going with offense because they most certainly have the best defense in the USFL.
I mean, look, you can be talking about junior high football or the NFL or anything in between. If you have offensive line problems, you are in deep trouble. Yeah. And I don't know if it was just a specific matchup, if there was an injury. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a USFL expert, but they were clear. I mean, just watching that game, it was a jailbreak every other down. I mean, they couldn't protect for anything.
And they one thing they do is they like to go for it on 4th down, so that makes you watch.
Well, maybe they should be the Gamblers then.
I think they all do. I think that's different about the U.S. Devin, what do you think?
I think it's new the strategy that they're implementing. They don't have anything to lose. Some of these teams don't have anything to lose, so you might as well just go for it. And plus, special teams has been a rough patch for the USFL. So I think coaches are a little bit more comfortable going for it versus punting or kicking it away.
The field goal kick in Zach has been awful. I'm for all 8 teams. And it's like none of these kickers are going to ever do anything in the NFL. Not just the kickoffs, but they've been missing. I don't know how many extra points. I've seen more extra points, I think, missed in 3 weeks of watching the USFL than I've seen at all in watching. I mean, at least last year in the NFL, it's insane. Well, it's like every other extra point's missed.
But think about this now. Like last year, when the Saints lost Will Lutz to injury, they tried out Brian Johnson. They tried out Cody Parkey. Brett Maher finally came in and did okay, but he still was a liability. Like it's hard for an NFL team if you lose one of the best 30 or so kickers in the world. It's hard to find somebody. So now we're talking about the next level down, the guys who aren't NFL hopefuls yet or are done being NFL hopefuls. It's a mess. And by the way, I like the 3-point conversion. the Breakers were down 9 in that game.
That's right.
And it wasn't over yet. You could go for the 3-point conversion from the 10-yard line?
From the 12.
From the 12, okay. And so if you get a touchdown, one play from the 12, it's like 4th and goal from the 12. You get 3 points instead of 2. You can score 9 points.
I'm going to say this, and I think you're going to agree with me on this one. The way that these kickers have been kicking, I think you're just better off going for 2 every time.
I mean, it certainly changes the math on it.
I mean, you talk about analytics and the chances. So if you're going to go, let's just say you're 60-40 on extra points, okay? And you're going to be, 35 to 40% if you're going to go for 2? Well, then the math tells you to go for 2. I think, and again, like Dan said, I think experimenting and with nothing to lose, at least until you go later on, go a couple games and play it like that and see what happens. But, I mean, I've seen shanks on 22-yard field goal attempts and just coaches shaking their heads. And, I mean, these are the coaches that have been around for a long time, so they're getting a little frustrated watching this kicking. But Devin's right. The special teams have been awful. The best play I've seen is Derek Dillon, formerly who went to Florida and then played at Pine High School up here on the North Shore, returned a kickoff 63 yards for a touchdown. Other than that, I mean, there really hasn't been much to brag about on special teams. It's been really bad.
But by the way, I appreciate you bringing math into the problem, because this is my argument for the NFL. In 2018 through 2020, I don't have last year's on here yet, but 2018 through 2020, the success rate on 2-point conversions in the NFL was 49.4%. Extra points was 94.1%. So if you do the math, and I'm not saying that you do it in every single situation, but you average more points per 2-point conversion than you do per extra point. Just saying.
I don't think that's right.
I've got it right here. Like I said, disclaimer, I do not, this study I'm looking at was 2018 through 2020. It does not have last year in it. But
you also, this is, we're going to get into this again when we get closer to the season. It actually matters.
Oh, boy, will we. Boy, will we.
But you're totally discounting the percentages of what happens to you if you miss an extra point and don't get it, and where that leaves you later on. And the ramifications of missing an extra point are completely different, or worse than if you make the extra point and move on. They hurt you more later. We'll get into that later. But let's don't clog up the show. Devin's already doing his little smirk thing way. He's hoping we have a 10-minute conversation.
Like math changes later or something? Like what?
I'm not talking about the percentage of actually making the kick or the extra point. I'm talking, granted, you do the math, whatever, you get more points. I'm talking about what position you put yourself in. It's kind of like in the NBA when you put Phoenix into the bonus with 8 minutes left in the quarter because you're being aggressive, as opposed to laying back a little bit and maybe they score a couple extra points, hit a couple extra field goals. And they're in the bonus for the last 8 minutes, and they're shooting free throws, and they're 14 out of 16 from the free throw line in one quarter. Whereas if we would have just let them hit the damn field goals, they're 50%. They're only going to make 3 of 6 or whatever it is. There's a big difference. So we'll talk about that later.
I don't think that's an appropriate.
It's not just the percentages of that particular point or miss.
I will agree.
But in the USFL, they should try it.
It's a situational thing. I mean, you don't always want to go for 2, just like you don't always want to kick the extra point. It's a situational thing. So I do agree on that. But speaking of next football season, I mentioned this early in the show. For those of you still watching, we have some college football lines for 2022. Just popped at Caesars Sportsbook. You can actually bet them right now if you see some value. It's a little bit risky to bet them now, but here's one. LSU's favored by 3.5 against Florida State at the Caesars Superdome, September the 4th. That's a Sunday night. I mean, we don't even know who LSU's quarterback is going to be. So whether it's going to be Miles Brennan or Garrett Nussmeier or Jaden Daniels, I don't know. Maybe it'll be Walker Howard, but LSU's favored by 3.5.
Devin's the college football expert.
On 2 teams you've never seen before, Devin. Go for it.
He's the expert.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this line. I mean, I guess they're betting on LSU's talent and coaching under Brian Kelly to be good. But I mean, it's very tough to handicap this one 4 months out from the season. So I think LSU should be favored because of the talent discrepancy, but we don't know what's going to be out on the field in terms of who's going to be quarterback, and I think that's going to play a big part on how successful they are on that first night. Maybe they roll out multiple quarterbacks, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Who even knows?
Was it Florida State last year? Zach played. Did they play? Wasn't it Clemson they played, or who did they play?
Dame.
Like Notre Dame.
They played Notre
first
Dame.
Game of the season.
It was Brian
first
Kelly,
game of the season. Crazy game, and Florida State lost in a heartbreaker, and then they flopped right after. I think they lost to like Jacksonville State right after that. So I think Florida State is still one of those teams where you don't know what you're going to get because they always have great athletes there. But it goes to show that if they were able to come out and play like that against Notre Dame last year, they certainly come and play like that against LSU. So I mean, you can't bet on this right now.
The only thing I'll say is if you think the line's moving one direction or another for whatever reason, and I'm not just talking about this game. I'll read some other lines here in a second. But if you think this line is moving one direction or the other, you can actually get 3-4 points of value now. But you better be right. That's the hard part. So LSU minus 3.5. That's at the Dome on Sunday night. Here are some other college football lines at Caesars. August 27th, this game is in Ireland. Nebraska minus 10.5 against Northwestern. Then the following week, another Big Ten game. Penn State minus 4 at Purdue. Pitt is minus 8.5 against West Virginia. Here's an interesting one because I don't know if you guys saw this story.
Pickett?
Yeah, I don't know. But West Virginia was not very good last year. So here's an interesting one. I don't know if y'all saw this story about a couple of big bettors. One was at Caesars, and I don't remember where the other one. It was a different sports book, but they were 5-figure bets on Utah State to win the national championship.
I did see that actually.
No.
Maybe they were 4-figure bets. Maybe they were like $5,000.
Was it Utah or Utah State?
It was Utah State because it was like 150 to 1. I mean, Utah would not be that high because Utah won the Pac-12. Now, Utah State opens at Alabama. So if you think they're going to win that game, I guess they could get into the college football playoff. But so anyway, that's the backdrop. The line comes out today, or yesterday, I think it was, and it's Alabama minus 31. So
I was going to say, it's like 150 to 1 for Utah State to win that game.
And if they win that game, they would be, I suppose, theoretically in the national championship conversation. But if you think they're going to win the national championship, you better
be Alabama.
You better put your freaking house on Utah State plus 31. I mean, you at least think it's going to be a close game.
I'm not.
I guess.
For that. Devin, I mean, do you see a reason for that? I mean, you're the king of
the Mountain West is Devin's territory. So let's hear what Devin has to say.
I cannot back them up on this one. Look, Utah State had a great year. They beat.
Did Jordan Love go back to Utah State or something?
Would you bet on him if he did?
No, I still wouldn't bet on him.
I know Jordan Love. I like the guy, but I still don't know if I'd bet on him to win the national title.
No, but Utah State, they beat Oregon State, so maybe they think they can make another jump. But I just can't imagine a scenario where they beat Alabama because they just do not match up with them position by position. Utah State is getting really good, and Blake Anderson has done a really nice job since he got there last year. But for them to go from winning I mean, they were even favored to win the Mountain West Championship. Everyone thought San Diego State was going to roll by them, so I will give them credit for that. But they're not anywhere near Alabama's level in terms of national championship.
Yeah,
can you bet on them to Can you bet on them to make I don't know the Holiday Bowl or something like that? I mean,
well, that's what they played. They played in the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl last year.
Okay, was that Jimmy Kimmel Las Vegas Bowl?
Yeah, no,
or that was in LA, I guess.
Yeah,
Los Angeles, LA Bowl. That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
get them all that stuff.
I don't know, man, but so now I'm looking up their odds at Caesars, and they're 750 to 1. Maybe it was 1,000 to 1. I don't. None of this makes any sense.
I would not put $1. I'm not, and I'll waste $1 on almost anything. Yes. I would not waste $1 on that. That's how that's not. It's not happening. I'm not wasting.
I just don't. I don't. Well, and even if they were to beat Alabama, a team like that with that schedule is going to have to win every other game all year.
Well, not only that, then they're going to have to get into the playoff and beat another SEC team in the first round,
right?
Or potentially an Oklahoma or something. Well, not Oklahoma.
Ohio State. Yeah, I mean something along USC. Yeah,
and then they're going to have to beat either Alabama or Georgia, Alabama again, or Georgia in the national championship game. It's not happening. I'm not wasting time.
I'm going to read through the rest of these lines because I spent too much time on Utah State, Alabama, but I did find that one interesting. Mississippi State -11 at home against Memphis. Memphis won that game last year at Memphis. One of the big games of the week, Georgia 15-point favorites over the Oregon Ducks. Ohio State is a 13-point favorite over Brian Kelly's old team, Notre Dame. It's Arkansas -8 against Cincinnati. So I guess the odds makers do not see Cincinnati back in the playoff. Lost a lot of players, of course. Here's a good one. Utah at Florida. What do you guys think that line is?
-3.
Billy Napier's first game in Gainesville.
I'm going to say it wouldn't surprise me Utah's favorite, but I think it's going to be really, really a close one because I think Utah's got a lot coming back, and they were good last year.
Jim wins. It's a pick'em. Utah and Florida is a pick'em. Then we have Florida State, LSU, and then the Monday night game, the Labor Day night game, is Clemson -21.5 against Georgia Tech. So,
my dad's poor Yellow Jackets are not very good anymore. They haven't been good in a long time.
Well, and the weird thing about that is it's an ACC game, and Georgia Tech, I guess, gave up the home game to play at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where there's going to be a lot more Clemson fans.
It's like 2 minutes down the road.
I was going to say, it's a couple minutes down the street.
It's only a couple miles, but it's also they probably open the tickets up, and there's more tickets, and Clemson fans are going to come down. And
you could still go eat lunch at the Varsity and then go stumble over to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
They are going to be rambling wreck, emphasis on the wreck by the end of that game. Dad joke of the day.
That's some rough game ones for some of those teams. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
It is.
That's rough.
Yeah. Well, there'll be talk about how the SEC stinks if Utah beats Florida, and if LSU loses to Florida State, and the non-SEC, the hate SEC people will be in their glory. And then by the time that November comes, there'll be Alabama and Georgia again, and they'll be whatever.
But let's bookmark these odds, because what will be interesting is to see how do they change over the next 3 to 4 months before we're actually playing these games, and see what changes. I mean, we don't even know the quarterback at LSU, for instance. We don't know how injuries will change things. So it'll be interesting. And then next week, we actually do have part of the NFL schedule. Caesars was going to come out with the lines for the NFL international games by the end of the week, I believe. I did see Saints-Vikings listed somewhere, can't remember where, with the Vikings favored by 1. And so we'll see some NFL lines coming out as well over the next week, and we'll talk about those too.
Oh, well, the Vikings are going to be much better, and I think the Vikings very well could be the favorites to win the NFC North next year. They're my sneaky NFC North pick, because I think the Packers are going in the wrong direction.
You know what? Before we go, I promised James some hockey picks too. I did make a couple series hockey picks. I think the Florida Panthers come back and take out the Washington Capitals. I had a -2.5 games, and the Capitals won the first game. So I think the Panthers take care of business. I also think the Oilers come back and beat the Kings in that series. So
my Red Wings stinks. My Red Wings stinks. So
yeah, yes they do.
Hockey's dead.
Hey, if you want to get in on the action, check out the Caesars Sportsbook app. First bet insurance up to $1,100. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars. It's for our listeners. It's for first-time users. NOLA.com/Caesars. Your first bet is insured entirely up to $1,100. So want to mention that. Thank you to Caesars Sportsbook, where Devin is at Harrah's New Orleans. Also, thank you to the Tulane Doctors for sponsoring us. We appreciate it. Kentucky Derby on Saturday. Place your bets, run for the roses, NBA playoffs going hot. How about some final thoughts, Devin?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a pivotal weekend, I think, for the Memphis Grizzlies. I think they have to capture at least one game on the road against Golden State to have a chance in this series. And I think if they win Game 3, people are going to start waking up to Memphis, maybe pushing this series to 7. So I think the Grizzlies are I think Jim is on board with that. But I think the Grizzlies are a sleeper team to watch because they certainly have the star power to push Golden State to the brink.
Jim?
I agree. I've been all over Memphis from the beginning. I think they can make a series out of this. And conversely, I think the Suns and the Heat are going to win in a sweep. I think they're just that much better than those teams. And the Sixers, even if they get Joel Embiid back, I just don't think. I mean, what is the deal with James Harden standing behind the 3-point line, just standing there? He just stands there. I mean, it's so frustrating.
I don't know. He has among superstars, and I still think he's probably an above average player. But do you guys remember another superstar still presumably in his prime who has regressed like James Harden has regressed this? I mean, especially since he left Brooklyn, he looks awful.
I don't even
compared to what he was.
It's not just the talent though. He doesn't care and doesn't try. That's what I don't remember him doing that with Houston or playing like that before. I mean, Devin, am I missing something here?
Yeah, I think he just looks disengaged at times, and that's very unlike him because he controls the game most of the time, or he did with Houston. And I don't know what happened. I honestly don't. Him and Russell Westbrook have been the two players that it just doesn't make any sense how they went from MVP caliber to you don't know what you're going to get from on a given night.
Well, Zach, I do have one more thing to say that's not NBA related. We talked about Jeff Duncan on Datitude, and it's so interesting because, we mean to hold our conversations to a half an hour, and they're so interesting. And I'm not just saying this. I mean, every time I have them on, we just go and talk, and the next thing I know, I download it onto my computer, and it's an hour. But it's an hour of just, to me, I'm biased, but highly interesting stuff. We talk about the Derby. We talk about Tyrann Mathieu. We talk about the Saints draft picks. And then we get into his book coming up that he's working on with Steve Gleason, which I find fascinating, and how he communicates with Steve Gleason, and how Steve has become basically a cult hero throughout America almost. And so we have an interesting conversation on that. And then also we're going to wrap up the show. We're going to have about 10 minutes. I have not done this interview yet, but we're going to have Troy Riley, who was the Saints presenter, the winner of the season ticket holder contest that got to go up there with Roger Goodell on stage and announce the Saints pick. We're going to have him come on and tell us about his experience in Vegas and how he and his wife got to enjoy the weekend, and he got to go up there and say with the 161st pick, the Saints select the linebacker from Appalachian State, Jackson. First name, help me out, guys. One of the Jackson brothers.
Starts with a J.
No, the other one.
DeMarco Jackson.
DeMarco Jackson. Yeah. So,
yes.
And so it's going to be a cool thing to have him on and talk about his experience and fan experience. And we did not run into each other in Vegas. I've known Troy. I have not talked to him for probably 20-something years. I just saw that he did it on Facebook. So we're going to have him on to kind of wrap up tomorrow's show. So Datitude should be very interesting tomorrow. We'll have video snippets on our Facebook and YouTube pages as well.
It's fantastic. I tried to get Jeff Duncan to come talk Derby with us, and he was, I got tickets to Jazz Fest. So
yeah, he's been I had to get him at 8 this morning, or I wasn't going to get him because he was going to Jazz Fest at 9:30, and you don't want to get him after that.
No. There's many reasons why you don't want to get somebody at Jazz Fest. So, hey, enjoyed the show. Went on. Speaking of things that go on longer than you thought they were going to, because you get into interesting conversations. Kentucky Derby, NBA playoffs, USFL, and even some early college football lines. Thanks for being here. We'll be back 4 p.m. Monday for Bayou Bets, and then also next Tuesday at 3:30, Spencer the Guru will be back with some fantasy football stuff from the draft, the rookies he likes in fantasy football with where they landed. So that's a different conversation. A lot of those guys are running backs and receivers taken in rounds 2 through 4. You're not necessarily talking about just first-round picks. So we'll talk to Spencer about that on Tuesday. So check out Datitude tomorrow. Bayou Bets. We'll see you back here 4 p.m. on Monday. Thanks for being here, everybody.